Hello everybody, we are the Plant Lab working towards the sustainable Hatfield campus. This is our team. We consist of architecture and landscape architecture students. We structured our page ending with a site analysis where we divided into groups to further analyze our regions.
Global population growth and urbanization place a stress on our natural resources, causing global concerns like pollution, the urban heat island effect, urban flooding, food security, biodiversity loss, and human well-being concerns. By introducing green infrastructure networks, we can introduce ecosystem services to increase human and ecological benefits. Ecosystem services are defined as direct and indirect contributors of ecosystems to human welfare and can be divided into provisioning, supporting, cultural, and regulating services. Using urban agriculture typologies and productive urban landscapes as the Plant Lab green infrastructure platforms, we can introduce ecosystem services. The aim of the Plant Lab project is to create an experimental agroecology platform to incorporate local edible plants and culture into food production through mapping the existing open spaces as study sites to develop a Plant Lab framework. The goal is to stimulate conversation about indigenous African plants' role in contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals is a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030 all people enjoy peace and prosperity. The Plant Lab project will focus on and grow awareness of good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and the climate action. Through this project, we will develop a Plant Lab strategy to propose a green infrastructure network map focusing on ecological and agroecological areas as biodiversity habitat enhancers and human well-being corridors. We will also propose locations for land art, living installations, and urban farming outputs to form part of the edible green infrastructure typologies.
We have a number of collaborators in the Plant Lab, so we want to mention them. Our collaborators consist of the Department of Fine Arts, the Department of Architecture, Interior Architecture and Landscape Architecture, as well as the Department of Consumer Science and Natural Agricultural Sciences, and then of course the Javett UP.
We have identified the various users of Javett UP and the University of Pretoria. These include UP students who are the main users of the site area, researchers, staff members from both UP and Javett UP, vehicles and cyclists peaking around 08 and 1700, diplomats whose times vary depending on the activity being held, school groups, and public users during operational hours. Each user's active or passive engagement in the Plant Lab framework will help refine the goals of the framework and gauge the user's attitude towards adopting the values of Plant Lab in their individual lives.
Before we go further in the presentation, we want to start by introducing a few terms that we use further on. Green infrastructure can be defined as a strategically planned network of natural and semi-natural areas. Edible green infrastructure is the same network, but with edible food components. Agroecology can be defined as the application of ecological concepts and principles within farming. Biodiversity, as we all know, is all different kinds of life within one area. Sustainability can be defined as the balance between environment, equity, and economy. African food plants are food crops that have their origin in Africa as well as South Africa. Ecological emergencies are the decline of nature all around us due to our own actions. Nature-based solutions are the sustainable management and use of natural features and processes to tackle socio-economic issues. Food security is the state of having reliable access to affordable, nutritious foods. Ecosystem services can be defined in 4 categories: cultural services, which include ways in which nature impacts people's health and well-being. Provisioning services are tangible goods that people can harvest from the environment. Regulating services occur in the ecosystem that leads to benefits such as climate regulation, flood management, and water filtration. And lastly, supporting services. The ecosystems could not function without this service, such as nutrient cycle, soil formation, and habitat provision.
We'll now dive into the heart of our project as we introduce you to our study site and its surrounding areas. We initially took a look at some of the biodiverse areas surrounding the study site in the Tshwane metropolitan area, which is centered on South Africa's administrative capital city, Pretoria. The site is situated at the foot of the Magaliesberg mountain range, not too far from the Groenkloof Camp Nature Reserve and the Pretoria Botanical Gardens. Our study site consists of the University of Pretoria Hatfield campus, located on the northern side of Linwood Road, and the Javett UP Art Centre, situated directly across from it. The Javett UP is however connected to the campus via an accessible pedestrian bridge that spans across Linwood Road. Further depicted here is the extent of the study site, as well as a link from the Javett UP to the Giving Gardens located on campus.
The full potential of the current green infrastructure on the Hatfield campus and Javett UP is underutilized, considering unsustainable food systems, student health, well-being, and ecosystem services delivered. We will take a look at the who, what, where, when, and why to gain insights. The steps that we take to gain insights includes a literature and precedent review, workshop at the Javett UP, identify GI typologies and criteria, analyze our sites, develop a spatial framework, and link a path through the site. Here is a more detailed representation of the steps we took, including reviews and discussions, workshop with the Javett curatorial team, visiting and analyzing our sites, and then finally working as a group to bring together our findings and come up with interventions for our plant lab framework. Here is a video illustrating some of the work that we did with the Javett curatorial team to decide on our plant lab framework, including our problems, aims, objectives, and outcomes.
As part of Phase 2, we conducted a literature review and precedent study. The literature review was done by each team member, plotting the main takeaways from the allocated readings onto mind maps that we presented to one another. The commonalities identified between these articles allowed us to develop a study criteria by which primary themes could be categorized. This table summarizes the relevance and application of each literature piece to the plant lab project as a whole and situates it within the identified criteria. The result of the table was then synthesized into a graph analyzed according to its emphasis on the identified focus themes to the left. Through the literature review, the criteria identified was further used to guide the precedent study. 3 studies were selected for analysis according to their relevance to the plant lab aims and objectives set out by the team.
Looking at the precedent studies, we came to a conclusion that there is a few principles that are very important for us to take into consideration. The Melbourne Sky Farm looks at repurposing existing places, creating an oasis for rich biodiversity and a place where the community can come together. The Living Beehive taught us that we can use nature to help us find innovative ways to solve context-driven problems. The Medical Herbman Cafe shows how we can find creative ways to communicate the benefits of nature, and the Company Gardens in Cape Town shows us how we can include a space for indigenous vegetation within the urban fabric.
Now moving on to Phase 2 and 3. This is the Javett UP workshop phase where we got to interact with the Javett UP curatorial team. They assisted with identifying some of the issues and interests they experienced at the Javett UP gallery, which assisted with the identification of GI typologies moving forward. We had an insightful discussion with the curatorial team where experts from different fields brought to our attention the future plans and expectations that they like to have at the Javett UP gallery, as well as some issues and realities they are currently facing or could possibly face in the future. From this, we devised some major talking points to address for the project, which include 2. The current problems they are experiencing at the Javett UP gallery, as well as the problems that would arise with the introduction of GI and EGI typologies to the gallery. 3. What do we aim to achieve with the introduction of GI and EGI typologies to the current gallery space and their future developments? From these problems and aims, we could then identify and filter the main objectives and outcomes of the project. Lastly, we concluded that the objectives and outcomes had to answer the key questions that link to the Javett UP Gallery. It is important to recognize the sense of scale to the Javett Gallery, the surrounding areas, and how GI and EGI typologies could potentially answer the questions that were selected in the objectives and outcomes.
Looking at the problems we identified: lack of intersectoral involvement, lack of knowledge on EGI and GI, not meeting SDG targets, food insecurity amongst UP students, unsustainable food production and systems. Aims: multidisciplinary involvement and gathering, introducing, connecting healthy GI and EGI, educational repository of information, accessible, safe engagement, sustainable organic food supply and access, and objectives: marketing, participation and education, innovative GI interventions, access of sustainable food systems, circular food production and use, sustainable practices. And then lastly, our outcomes: inclusive interdisciplinary collaboration, creative marketing, seed saving and exchange programs, interactive art, tours, workshops and exhibitions, long-term monitoring and archiving. In conclusion, we create the basis of the Plant Lab framework, a green infrastructure network with a series of nodes and linears, starting at the Javett UP and terminating at the Giving Gardens, that actively offers opportunities for engagement amongst identifiable stakeholders.
We identified opportunities for engagement with UP faculties, school districts, sustainability agencies, business improvement districts, Giving Gardens and the Pretoria Botanical Gardens, as well as public land acquisition programs.
Now moving on to phases 4 and 5. During phase 4 of our process, we conducted a thorough site analysis of the Javett UP site, as well as the Hatfield campus. For phase 5, using the information we collected during the site analysis, we developed a spatial framework within which design interventions could be developed to address the objectives of the Plant Lab. The entirety of the Hatfield campus was divided into 4 regions for the site analysis process. Starting at the Javett UP site, we have the Art Link. To the north of that lies the Garden Route. The central region of campus was named the Social South, and to the east of that we have Adler's Axis. A few additional terms worth mentioning before diving into the site analysis as defined by the Plant Lab team include: node, a place where people rest, take a break, meet or gather. Linear, a path for movement through space. Constructed green infrastructure, a constructed element that consists of building materials and vegetation. Active space, a space that is readily utilized by many people to gather or take a break. And inactive space, a space that's not readily utilized by many people.
Forming the basis of our analysis, we looked at creating a criteria on which we can evaluate and analyze our site. We divided our space into 3 different categories: linear, nodal, and constructed green infrastructure, and then we identified typologies for each. Furthermore, the conclusion we drew from the precedent studies, literature reviews, and discussions helped us form a baseline for more detailed criteria. These typologies helped us analyze our site to identify what interventions is needed and where it would be the most successful in the context of the University and the Javett UP Art Centre. We analyzed our site based on the above criteria and synthesized all our information. We analyzed the site based on edible green infrastructure, constructed green infrastructure, permeability, indigenous and exotic vegetation, connectivity to green infrastructure, tree cover percentage, and ecosystem services. This is the existing sculpture route, which helps us identify suitable locations for new sculptural interventions.